is day 26, and the last Bible study was sloppy. I apologize. You can always tell like how your performance is when you kind of still sweating from the gym. Sorry, but you can always kind of tell how your performance is in your life when you're looking at your spiritual life. Man, it's been a tough week, but it doesn't change anything. We still need to get in the Word and see where we're at. So I am going to hop in here. I got my other phone charging so we can see what's going on. And how are you guys? What's going on? Let's pause this and go to the chat. So I think, what did I say? I'm on day 37, day 26, chapter 38 in Genesis. So let's check that out. So let's see where we're at. 28, only off by 10 chapters. So this is talking about Judah and Tamar. So Judah and Tamar. So this phone is charging. Hopefully it's up here in a minute, but let's just read this real quick and see what this has, and then we'll go through the devotional and see what is in there as well, and we will check it out here shortly. So I'm gonna pause this and we can go to the chat. Nothing more distracting than hearing yourself. Okay, so Judah and Tamar. I don't know who Tamar is. Do you guys? So but I think that we were reading about Tamar, but maybe I might be wrong. So it came to pass at that time that Judah departed from his brothers and visited a certain Adullamite whose name was Hurrah. And Judah saw there a daughter of certain Canaanite whose name was Shua, and he married her and went into her. So she conceived and bore a son, and he called his name She conceived again and bore a son, and she called his name Onan. And she conceived yet again and bore a son, and called his name Shelah. He was at Sizib when she bore him. When Judah took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar, but Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord killed him. And Judah said to Onan, "Go into your brother's wife and marry her, and raise up an heir to your brother." But Onan knew that the heir would not be his. And it came to pass, when he went to his brother's wife, that he emitted on the ground, lest he should give an heir to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord. Therefore he killed him also. Adam Vetchard. Philippians 3:9 says, "And it be found not having my own righteousness, which is the law, but it's faith in Christ, the righteousness which is of God through faith." That's interesting. So, Trump or Kamala, I'm going to let you guess. I'm going to let you guess what that question is. But Adam, it's so interesting that you talked about the law. So I was talking to somebody today. They were making this point about, is it more important to have free lunch for kids or to have the 10 Commandments posted up in their school? What do you guys think? That's my question. But I think instilling in our children morality from an early age is extremely healthy. For me, it's building foundation. So it's the reason that I did do homeschool personally. I'm making a sacrifice to attempt to do private school for my son. It's not easy. It's not easier. It's not cheaper. It's not more convenient. It's twice as far away to drive. But we do that because we have faith in what God is doing through his word, right? Through the relationship. So, but yeah, we don't We don't have anything in our own righteousness, right? But we know that we do these things to glorify the God that we worship, right? That's how I see it. So it's building relationship, it's showing our respect and love through obedience, or at least our best effort, because we're human, right? So I'm going to get into this next part. So it says, then Judah, and if you guys want to comment, I'll comment back and kind of interact with you guys if you're new to the channel. So says, then Judah said to Tamar, his wife, or his daughter-in-law, I don't know where I got that from. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow in your father's house till my son Shelah is grown. For he said, lest he also die like his brothers. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. Interesting comment, Tony. I'll pray for you, brother. Now in the process of time, the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died, and Judah was comforted. And he went up to his sheep shearers at Timnah, he and his friend Hera, the Adulamite, and it was told Tamar, saying, look, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep. So she took off her widow's garments, covered herself with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in an open place which was on the way to Timnah. For she saw, but Shelah was grown, and she was not given to him as a wife. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a harlot. That's an interesting thought right there. Because she had covered her face, then he turned to her by the way and said, please let me come into you, for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. That's a plot twist. That's kind of wild. And probably had some disgust there. So inappropriate laughter, he said, uh-oh, I know those numbers, it's the devil. Yeah, Tony, actually, Tony can stay. He probably needs to hear this just as much as the rest of us. And it's all right, man. We all know Satan's real, so you're just making us aware of the evil that exists. Playing with fire, you're 15 and struggle to keep your faith to Christ. Nothing you try to make your homosexual feelings go away. And first of all, I'm sorry, because I know that's a painful one right there, and you feel a lot of isolation. But you're not alone. I'll tell you that right now. And best way to combat that is to get in the Word and just build relationship with Christ. And I find that, I'll be honest, like we all have desires of the flesh, right? I especially struggle with that. And my sin is no different than yours, right? So let's remember that a lot of people, especially Christians, want to make it seem that way. Might be in the end harder to get where you want to go with alignment with God in that relationship, but it doesn't mean that God doesn't love you. But I'd say, you're 15, you're just figuring things out. So I'd love to chat more. I've had a lot of those conversations with a lot of close friends. So if you're down, I'll chat with you privately if you want, or openly on the channel too. But yeah, so Nicker, I'm not gonna address that, but inappropriate laughter. Well, why are we talking about minors? Minors need guidance. This is wholesome, biblically founded guidance. So I'm just trying to, sometimes these people don't know where to go. They can't talk to their parents. They can't talk to their teachers. I have a son. I would tell him the same exact thing, whether he's straight, homosexual, whatever. But yeah, playing with fire, you are welcome to email me at thekylewaugh@gmail.com. KYLEWAUGH. So it's thekylewaugh@gmail.com. Feel free to send me an email there. And let me know that you did it. Just drop me a link. But anyways, the word is so powerful. Like, that's why they call it the daily bread, because that's how we live off of it, right? So then, and I'm gonna keep reading, but you guys keep posting up comments, and I'll come back here in a minute to check it out. So it says, so this is this. I mean, and if you're listening to sexual immorality, Bible talks a lot about that. I mean, we're just talking about, it says, when Judah saw her, he thought she was a harlot because she had covered her face. So she had deceived him. Then he turned to her by the way and said, please let me come into you. And that means what you think it does. For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. How crazy is that? So that's an important reason not to lie, deceive, manipulate. Those are all tools of Satan. So she said, what will you give me that you may come into me? And he said, I will send a young goat from my flock. So she said, will you give me a pledge till you send it? Then he said, what pledge shall I give you? So she said, your signet and cord and your staff that is in your hand. Then he gave them to her and went into her, and she conceived by him. So she arose and went away and laid aside her veil and put on the garments of her widowhood. And I see some other comments down here, but Frank Offa, you pray for me. You're blessed and washed in Adonai's Holy Spirit, that he lifts up your countenance. The Lord loves you and Nicole so much. May you heal together. Love you, son. I don't know who that's directed at, Frank, but that is that's a nice prayer, and thank you for sharing. So we need more of that. We need more fatherly presence. That's for sure. Way to show up, Dad. And Judah sent the young goat by the hand of his friend, the Adullamite, to conceive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he did not find her. Then he asked the men of that place, saying, where is the harlot who was openly by the roadside? And they said, there was no harlot in this place. So he returned to Judah and said, I cannot find her. Also, the men of this place. Hey, buddy. Justice?
Yeah.
Make sure you have your clothes on.
Why?
Because I'm recording.
Oh.
And my big head is in the way. He just got out of the shower. Just make sure, give him fair warning.
Are you live?
Yes, I am. So, playing with fire, you said you're sorry you can't email or talk to you in private because you're not really comfortable. Oh, of course. Like, I don't blame you. And workout 007, are we talking about meeting up to work out? But anyways, yeah, I'm down to meet anybody. So you guys let me know when. And I can't see who's who. If you're in Colorado, easy to meet up, but I do travel from time to time as well. And they said, there was no harlot in this place. So he returned to Judah and said, I cannot find her. Also, the men of this place said there was no harlot in this place. Then Judah said, let her take them for herself, lest we be shamed, for I sent this young goat, and you have not found her. And it came to pass about 3 months after that Judah was told, saying, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has played the harlot. Furthermore, she is with child by harlotry. So Judah said, bring her out and let her be burned. When she was brought out, she sent her father-in-law, saying, by the man to whom these belong, I am with child. And she said, please determine who these are, the signet and the cord and the staff. So we know where that came from, right? So the truth always comes out. That's what I know. So Judah acknowledged them and said, she has been more righteous than I, because I did not give her to Solah, my son, and he never knew her again. Now it came to pass at the time for giving birth that, behold, twins were in her womb, and so it was when she was giving birth that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took the scarlet thread and bound it on his hand, saying, this one came out first. Then it happened, as he drew back his hand, that his brother came out unexpectedly. And she said, how did you break through? This breach be upon you. Therefore his name was called Perez. Afterward his brother came out, who had the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah. That's interesting. And I mean, in these times, up until probably honestly the last couple hundred years, it was a huge deal to be the oldest son, right? So, what's up, mobile gaming? How are you? So this next part, I really like this story about Joseph as a slave in Egypt, just because it continues to talk through that progression that he's going through, right? And when we're all looking at that season, that's exactly how we're trying to figure out in our own season, right? Because we're not where we want to be in life, but that's because God's working on our character. That's what I believe. So I embrace the hard seasons because those are when the work gets done, right? So my pastor says, don't let a hard season go to waste. I love that. So Joseph, a slave in Egypt. This is Genesis 39. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, brought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And he saw his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did prosper in his hand. So Joseph found favor in his sight and served him. Then he made him overseer of his house, and all that he had he put under his authority. So it was from the time that he had made him overseer of his house and all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in the house and in the field. Thus he had left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he did not know what he had except for the bread which he ate. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool to see the blessings just be poured out in abundance. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance, and it came to pass after these things that the master's wife cast longing eyes on Joseph, and she said, lie with me. But he refused and said to his master's wife, look, my master does not know what it is with me in the house, and he has committed all that he has to my hand. Isn't this interesting? Like just how he says, like he committed it to his hand, which means that he can control it all. There is no one greater in this house than I, nor has he kept back anything from me but you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness, a sin against God? And he's not even talking about the husband. So it was, as she spoke to Joseph day by day, that he did not heed her to lie with her or to be with her. But it happened about this time, when Joseph went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was inside, that she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. But he left his garment in her hand and fled and ran outside. And that's actually what we're supposed to do when we're confronted with those, basically with those temptations, right? And so it was, when he saw that he had left his garment in her hand and fled outside, that she called to the men of her house and spoke to them, saying, see, he has brought in to us a Hebrew to mock us. He came into me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And it happened, when he heard that I lifted my voice and cried out, that he left his garment with me and fled and went outside. So she kept his garment with her until his master came home. Then she spoke to him with words like these, saying, the Hebrew servant whom you brought to us came in to me to mock me. So it happened, as I lifted my voice and cried out, that he left his garment with me and fled outside. That was pretty intense, like an intense betrayal. You think about your boss and his wife trying to do something like that, or husband, right? So it was when his master heard the words which his wife spoke to him, saying, Your servant did to me after this manner, that his anger was aroused. Then Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where his king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in his prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy, and he gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever they did there, it was his doing. The keeper of the prison did not look into anything that was under Joseph's authority, because the Lord was with him. And whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper. It's pretty wild. That was a common theme with Joseph. And actually, it's kind of interesting that theme kind of still existed in the house, where he had favor with his father as well. So that's kind of a theme with Joseph. Very interesting, in my opinion. But mobile, I would love to go live on Rumble. I don't know how. I I feel like I'm technically challenged on that level, but man, that was good. So I really like that, as I knew I would. So I'm going to go into this devotional real quick. So, and if you guys aren't familiar, this is the Gleanings of Genesis Bible study. It's actually pretty good. So you can ride along with me in this one. So I did 38 and 39. So, okay, these are pretty good actually. So I don't always agree with them, but typically they're pretty good. So this just says lessons from the life of Joseph on how to overcome temptations. Speaking to this younger person's difficulty with temptation, as well as my own personal struggle. But we notice in this passage of Genesis 39 the characteristics of temptation, right? So this is interesting. One, the timing. Satan looks for a time when we are vulnerable. Joseph was far away from home. He was a slave. He was probably lonely. He was also experiencing some success. Temptation is strategically timed for those periods in which we are most vulnerable. I also think that temptation can come when you're tired. So when you're tired, I always tell everybody be careful, because that's when Satan likes to prowl. So number 2 is the regularity. Verse 10 says, she kept putting pressure on him day after day. So if you guys notice this, like, this is your warning. This is your, I would say your spiritual discernment, right? So this is, if something happens, that should be like warning number 1, right? Number 2 is, I would say, like, do something about it, right? The second time he should have mentioned this, hey, just so you know, master, this is what's happening. I don't know. There's probably a tactful way to do that, but if he was working with a man of means, then that guy could have probably had a spy that oversaw it and could have relayed that information or intelligence back to the master, right? But then he ended up denying that warning and didn't do anything about it. So then he dealt with a more severe consequence. But temptation is a battle that we face daily. It's a struggle that we'll live with for the rest of our life. Temptation is persistent. We have to deal with it every single day. And I was sitting there talking to my Uber driver the other night, and he's telling me all about it. And he's like, that never changes. That never changes. So it just stays consistent. The offense to God. Joseph said it would have been deeply offensive to God and his holy standards. When David committed adultery with Bathsheba, he said to God, against you and you alone I've sinned. I have done what is evil in your sight. We also see the steps that Joseph took to overcome the temptation, which is what? Turn and flee. That is what it is. Um, so, oh my goodness, you guys, we're not playing soccer here or speaking languages. Solamente inglés. But anyways, he formed his convictions of right and wrong before temptation. We're taught to anticipate it. Don't be surprised. Don't be intimidated by it. Don't be shocked by it. Instead, be prepared. So how can you be prepared, right? I mean, you got to know that the enemy is going to find your weaknesses, specifically the things that appeal to you, right? So I find the best thing to do is just remove myself from that environment entirely, or the thing from my presence that might be of temptation, right? So Joseph must have been aware that Potiphar's wife had eyes on him. He saw that trouble was brewing, and when it came out into the open, he had already settled the issue in his mind. I cannot do this. So he probably was thinking about it. I mean, I think typically when maybe somebody will find us, attractive or trying to bait us into something, I think that we're already aware, right? So it's being aware of what's happening, but also taking responsibility. Oh, which is the next one. He took responsibility for his actions. Joseph said, "How could I?" He didn't say, "Well, what could I do? I'm just a slave and she's the boss's wife." He didn't say, "I couldn't help it." He didn't blame the situation. He didn't blame the devil. He took personal responsibility for his actions. What do you guys think about that? I think that's definitely an interesting theme. And here's a big one. He called sin a sin. When temptation arose, Joseph responded with the truth. Joseph recognized how her invitation was wickedness and sin against both his earthly master and his heavenly master. And I think that that's important for all of us. I specifically, sometimes, man, it's like sit there and I wrestle with it. It's like, why do I wrestle with it? I know that I need to just say, all right, there's no justifying this. I need to just remove myself from this situation and stop trying to, as human beings, we like to complicate things and be like, oh, well, it's because of this or that, or this person's feelings or my feelings. But we know what we're doing, right? We know. So he did not play with sin. Joseph did not flirt with this temptation. We see it in verse 10. He not only refused to go to bed with Potiphar's wife, but he refused to even be with her. He flees. I think that that's the right thing. We read in verse 12 that he runs as fast as he can away from that compromising situation. So that's a good question. What do you guys need to run from? What sin do you need to flee from? You don't have to throw it out there. But number 5, he feared the Lord. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? Because we know what? So much of the world, the unbelievers do not believe that marriage includes God. But we as believers believe that that's a 3-cord strand, right? So that's why it's not easily broken, because God is part of it. So it's not just to sin against the person, like the other person's spouse, but it's to sin against ourselves, God, and the other people involved, right? But if you don't fear any consequences, then what will stop you, right? So what actually defines your morality? I mean, here in America, I was actually watching a great clip talking about where the influence of the 10 Commandments came from. And that was all biblically, the vast majority was biblically influenced. So, really good little TikTok thing I saw from Charlie Kirk. But this talks about a great motive for the Christian in the battle against temptation is that you have come to love God. I think you have to love God and you have to fear God. And I think that that's a very delicate blend of both. How did Joseph keep looking up when it looked as if God had let him down? The phrase that begins and ends with this chapter, the Lord was with Joseph and he gave him success. The reason Joseph was capable of standing up to the onslaught of temptation from Potiphar's wife is that the Lord was with him. That's true. So if you don't have a good relationship with the Lord, then do you expect him to be there for you when you're struggling? The most important thing we can do to ask for God's help in handling temptation. We are not strong enough to handle temptations ourselves. We need help. That is true. I think we need God's help and we need other accountability buddies, right? We need God to come alongside us and give us strength. The application question today, guys, is how might God be using your temptations to further his story? Understanding that, like Joseph, we are in the middle of the story and I cannot see the end. So I believe that I believe that sin can live in the dark. But if you bring it up, not that you have to proclaim it openly to the world, but if you talk about it with somebody that can give you constructive advice on how to deal with that, as we talked about earlier in this video, I think that it's one of these things specifically that there's spiritual warfare, and you can't use the things of the world. You can't kill this stuff the way that you would a wild animal that wanted to attack you, right? So it's different. You can't fight on that same level. So you have to change your tools and your weapons, right? So they call it the weapon of God, which is the word of God. And that's how you arm yourself for battle. Quote, temptation is the devil looking through the keyhole. Yielding is opening the door and inviting him in. So today the prayer is, Lord, I thank you for showing me how to win the victory over temptations in my life. Help me again to never open the door and give in. And we know that, we keep praying not to have that door open again, but we know that it will be. So we need to continue to try to turn away and do our best to not, don't open the door. If you can help it, stay out of the room, right? If you're not aware that there's a door, then the temptation is harder to invite into your life. I find oftentimes finding healthy ways to replace those temptations. So whether that it's, you need to go work out, you need to have a creative outlet, you need to have some sort of intellectual stimulation, or a healthy conversation and fellowship, right? So I find that stuff really helps. So I do seek those things out. So that's kind of how I get there. But anyways, guys, I'm going to pray. I'm going to shut this down. Do you guys have any prayers before I leave? I'm going to give you a minute to type anything up there. But guys, this was good. So dear God, I just say thank you for everything that you've given us. Thank you for, I see so many people that are less fortunate than myself. It helps me remind me of my blessings. The fact that we're just in such a unique opportunity to exist here in something that you created, and we constantly get to marvel at the beauty and the extremely ridiculous probability that all of this works so that we can exist here. The air we breathe, there's nothing like it in space that we're aware of, right? It's wild. And the fact that, you think about how the human body's built, and it's a miracle in itself. Life is a miracle. But I thank you for my son. I thank you for my brothers and their wives, their kids, all of our extended family and friends, and my friends that are like my family. I thank you for my clients and the people that I serve. I just pray that I serve them in a way that's honorable to you, but also that, God, you just continue to bless us with joy, bless me and everybody who's in connection with me. Just give us prosperity. And if we do endure hard seasons, allow us to get valuable information, allow us to glean the wisdom and the experience from those, and not lose the skills that we learned and earned in the hard season. But God, just thank you for this day. Let us rest well. Thank you for the daily word, and just that it completely tenderizes my heart, and God, just help me maintain this discipline. But let us just continue to seek you in all that we do. In your name, amen. All right, guys, so thank you for joining. That was Gleanings in Genesis, and I'll be back hopefully tomorrow. So much love. And again, I mean, whoever, if you need to reach out and chat with somebody, hit me up either in the comments section under the video once I make it active, or one of the other ones. Also, feel free to email me at the Kyle, Kyle, WAUGH @gmail.com, and no spaces, all lowercase. So anyways, have a great night. God bless you guys, and hopefully you glean something from this as well as church tomorrow, and I look forward to chatting with you guys soon. All right, nighty night.